Well, that was the Foreign Secretary out for a jog this morning. I'm glad to say Barry Gardiner has turned up late, but better late than never, I guess, wandering around the building like the Marie Celeste. Theresa Coffey. Boris Johnson, only last November, there can be no return to a hard border. Now he says, well, even with a hard border, there's nothing to worry about. Which is government policy?
We're absolutely clear there's not going to be a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. That was agreed by the European Union last December when we had a successful completion to phase one of our negotiations. That continues to be the position.
So why has he raised it in this letter?
I haven't seen the leaked letter. And
you haven't seen it? It's been everywhere.
You wouldn't expect me to comment on leaked letters. But as I think the Foreign Secretary's made clear, this is about trying to make sure that day zero to day one, people and businesses go about their daily lives. And there are ways we want that to happen, and it will happen. But
Mr. Johnson said that it would be unthinkable to have a hard border, that it would be economic and political madness. So if it's madness, why even raise the possibility in an official FCO letter?
Well, as I say, I haven't seen this letter. I can't comment on it.
Well, surely you should have made a point of seeing it before you come on this programme. Well, this is a matter of public interest and of government policy.
You would also know I'm not going to comment on leaked letters either. The reality is that we have this defined position. It was agreed last December.
Hold on a minute, Minister. You say that you're not going to comment on it. The man who wrote the letters just commented on it on television. Why would you not do it? If he sees fit to have written it, then comment on it, you are fit to comment on it too.
Regardless, Andrew, I think what the Foreign Secretary has made clear and is absolutely the position of the government, we will not be having a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland.
But he says that maybe we could, but if we had, it wouldn't matter very much, because 95% of trade, he claims, would still be pretty fiction-free. So what is government policy? Is it to have no hard border or no significantly harder border? Which is it?
So we've completed phase one. We're moving on to phase two. But in phase one, it was agreed between both sides there would be no hard border. Now,
why would he write to the Prime Minister suggesting that the border could in some ways be harder than it is now, having ruled it out as madness?
I don't know about the letter. I don't know why Boris wrote the letter. I don't know actually what he said in the letter.
You must be the only person in Westminster that doesn't know about this letter.
Well, we've been in legislation this morning, but nevertheless,
came out last night.
The point is, the position that we have is that there will be no hard border between the north and the south. That's a position on which both EU and actually across Parliament is united in ensuring that doesn't happen, and that's the reality of what we will deliver.
So will there be no number plate recognition cameras? Will there be no technology, just keeping an eye on what's going back and forward?
I don't think Boris is particularly into recognising technical solutions. The reality is, and I have...
I'm sorry, the letter is about the feasibility of technical solutions.
I have the Port of Felixstowe in my constituency. There are technology existing today about how goods move in and out of the country. He may be saying that there is technology we can use in the future to make sure that trade is as frictionless as possible. So it is about... we stick to our guns about, which is absolutely united, I believe, across Parliament. There will be no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and that's the outcome that has already been agreed.
But Mr. Johnson has compared the border between the North and South and Ireland as between Camden and Westminster, two London boroughs that I'm not aware have had been at war or had major casualties on either side of the border. He's now contemplating something in a letter to the Prime Minister that he had previously called madness. Isn't the Foreign Secretary now become a major embarrassment for your government?
I think the Foreign Secretary is fully behind the policy that there will be no hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland.
That doesn't explain why he wrote the letter that you haven't read.
I don't think there's anything more I can add, Andrew, apart from the border that exists today.
Except that it's not clear what government policy is you, an environment minister, and the foreign secretary of this government. It's not quite clear who speaks for the government. Are you in any surprise why Brussels is now despairing of the government's ability to say what its position really is on a whole host of things?
Well, I wasn't at the Chequers Summit last Friday, but there was a wide range of cabinet ministers there agreeing positions that we'll take forward. And the Prime Minister's going to set that out in her speech on Friday. I know Cabinet was discussing it yesterday. I believe they're convening again tomorrow. So that's when the next stage of what the Prime Minister wishes to set out to this country, but also to the European Union.
And you don't think it's the role of the Foreign Secretary to give at least some clarity and not add to the confusion on the government's position?
Well, I think it's clear that the Prime Minister will set out the position of the government about
I was
phase
asking
two.
about the Foreign Secretary.
I know you were. But
You dodged it.
the Prime
Very
Minister
well.
will set out on Friday, and we're all working hard to making sure that the phase two, that big council in March, is successful. That's why I've been visiting European ministers and will be doing so next week.
Barry Gardiner, Labour's now in favour of a customs union. But you want a bespoke customs union for Britain. You want full access to the single market. You want a say, well, you do, as Mr Corbyn said, he wanted access to the single market. You want a say in any future EU trade deals. That's what Mr Corbyn said too. What would you be prepared to give the EU in return?
Two things, I think, Andrew, and this is why having a customs union like Mercosur, like many other customs unions around the world, makes sense. It would give us our
No,
own...
I know the case for it.
Okay.
I'm asking, what would you give in return? The EU in return?
Two things. One is a partial, and it is only a partial solution to the issue of the border question in Ireland, which they, as much as we, want to ensure is not a problem in the future. And a customs union, which the government has ruled out with one of its red lines, unfortunately, is something that we believe would go a long way to solving that problem.
They've already said that Northern Ireland can have a customs union with the South.
Well, what we're saying is we would be in a customs union with the European Union.
What else would you give them?
And the other thing, of course, is we would give them tariff-free access into our markets because, of course, they export more goods to us than we do them. And as a result of that, it's in their interest not to have tariffs imposed on their goods.
But everybody's offering them tariff-free access.
Well,
the position of the British government is to give them tariff-free access.
Only they want to do it within a free trade agreement that has not yet been agreed and that the European Union says could not be better than Canada.
But if they're so keen on tariff-free access, they would agree to a free trade agreement. Otherwise, you're not giving them something they want.
They wouldn't.
You really think that would be enough to give them something they have never agreed to in any shape or form before?
Well, we believe that it's a very sensible and serious innovative proposal that solves two key problems for British business, British economy, and for the Irish.
I can see the problems it may solve for Britain. That's your case. That's why you're proposing. No. But I'm trying to find out why the EU would go down a road it has never gone down before. For example, you want, as a non-EU member, Britain to be able to have a say on any trade deals the EU does. Why would they give us that?
Well, trade agreements in goods have to be, if you're part of a customs union, have to be done together because, of course, you have common tariffs. You have common tariffs and quotas as a customs union.
As a non-EU member, why would they give us a say?
I'm trying to explain that to you. And that is because in most customs unions around the world, that is precisely what happens. There is a forum between the countries that form the customs union that then decide on what tariffs and quotas you'd apply to third countries on goods.
So you want the EU, as it does trade deals, you want the EU to agree to Britain being part of the negotiations?
It's of great benefit to them that we should be.
Why would they do that? Even Turkey's not part of the negotiations.
No, Turkey negotiated a very different, very asymmetric and actually a very damaging deal for Turkey.
But Turkey wanted to come in, so it was prepared to do that. Exactly. You are taking us out, at least I think that's your party's policy. I don't understand why the EU would give a power to a non-EU member, which would be Britain by then, that it doesn't even give to EU members.
Yes, and I've explained to you, because it's financially to their benefit.
This is fantasy.
It's not fantasy at all. It's financially to their benefit, and it goes a long way to solving the border problem in Ireland. And moreover, in any trade agreement that we were then to conclude on goods, because remember, a customs union relates to goods and not necessarily to services. A customs union on goods, it would give any third-party country that the EU and we together might be negotiating with a larger consumer base, so that the third-party country said, I'm getting 74 million extra consumers that we can then trade into.
Under
So
the
it's a
existing rule, Germany or France, members of the EU, have no direct say over trade policy. They have no direct say, they have no veto over any trade deal that is done by the European Commission. But why would Berlin or Paris agree to that?
Let me take you to task slightly there, because of course what we've seen is the way that trade agreements are conducted through the European Union does come back down for ratification by the countries.
Not on traded goods, it doesn't. And that's a Commission competence.
It's a Commission competence on traded goods.
Right.
But as you know, most trade agreements that are now concluded are mixed agreements.
And that's true. So therefore, where is your policy now then, if you want to have this say? Indeed, you seem almost to want to have a veto. Where does your policy stand given the ECJ Singapore judgment?
Well, the ECJ Singapore judgment, which was precisely about mixed agreements,
yes,
and making sure that there was then competence right the way down.
No, the ECJ judgment gives more power to the Commission and less to the nation states. That's the significance of the Singapore judgment. And yet you are asking...
Only by separating it out.
You are asking...
Sorry, it is important, Andrew, only by separating the two elements out.
But you are asking for Europe to give us a power that it doesn't give Berlin or Rome or Paris. It is fantasy land.
Well, I don't believe that's correct, because, as I say, it offers them two things which otherwise they would not necessarily have.
And you've said the two things. But let me ask you this. If they don't give it, frankly, most people think you've got no chance, is the customs union then out?
Well, look, in any negotiation, I think what's important to do is to set out what your objective in the negotiation is, to have a clear negotiating position. Right. And that's what on Monday the Labour Party outlined. We have a clear objective.
I understand that.
That is to have a customs union.
And that's clear, and I'm not arguing with that. What I'm asking you is, if the European Union says we will not allow you to participate in trade talks, you won't even have a say, you certainly won't have a veto, is that the idea of having a customs union, is it dead?
Well, no, because it's a negotiation. And in any negotiation, what happens is you negotiate. There may well be compromises on the way. And that's what a negotiation is about. But I believe this gives us a very strong position, because it's actually in their financial interest to have their goods come into our markets without any delays, without tariffs, without quotas.
And you would also like the freedom to subsidise industries in this country as well.
Well, that's a separate matter, but yes, indeed.
So you expect them to give us a situation which no major economy inside the EU has, and you expect to be part of a customs union and to have state subsidies of industries that you want to, whereas we all know that Brussels' major concern and all these things is a level playing field without these kinds of subsidies. You expect all that. Do you think Brussels is Santa Claus?
Well, let me just suggest this to you, Andrew. That actually, when people were voting in the referendum, those people who said that we should be leaving the European Union precisely said it was because we could be better off out. What we're trying to do within the Labour Party is to suggest ways in which we can mitigate the damage that this government is doing.
I understand that. I'm just trying to make out of it in any way possible.
Negotiation.
You think it is.
And we are trying to set out something that would solve the border question.
It was a cynical speech, which was a U-turn massively on elements. Not pretending any of this is easy, but we do need a free trade agreement with a customs arrangement. But by shutting ourselves off from doing deals around the world would be a huge error.
Well, you've seen the economic analysis of that, Therese.
OK, let's not go. I was simply trying to test how